Yvonne Yang with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwanese computer maker Acer has announced a hike in prices for their Chinese-made laptops. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump's levies on China have taken effect, as U.S. consumers continue to deal with the impacts of Trump's tariff campaign. Wesley Lewis reports.
Taiwan's top business leaders have convened to discuss how to deal with U.S. President Donald Trump's 10% tariffs on Chinese imports. This will affect Taiwanese companies like Acer, a leading computer maker with factories in China. In response to Trump's tariffs, Acer announced a 10% increase in prices for their products made in China and sold in the U.S. But the levies are a concern across the Taiwanese tech industry.
比较伤脑筋的，因为笔电我们在中国大陆的布局很深，而且整个供应链这个不容易移动，再加上笔电的市场并没有成长。
Tech analysts say higher prices due to Trump's tariffs should be temporary, but it could lead to major shifts in the global tech industry.
接下来呢，如果说美国的贸易伙伴呢跟美国呢有进行沟通，而且达到川普团队的一个想望的话，可能会引发一定程度的供应链重组。
In the 1990s, Taiwan became one of China's biggest sources of foreign direct investment. Now, over 80% of laptops made by Taiwanese companies are built in China. Taiwan's Foxconn, the world's largest contract manufacturer of electronics, has its biggest facility in China, while other major Taiwanese tech manufacturers like Asus, Acer, Quanta, Inventec, Wistron, and Compal all have factories in China. Last year, Taiwan tech companies began plans to move some of their operations to the U.S., a policy that industry leaders intend to accelerate due to Trump's new tariffs on China.
我个人跟我的同事在2月10号回访，同时我们有5家我们在电电工会算是大型的公司跟着我一起去对德州将来怎么跟台湾更进一步合作有比较深刻的讨论。
Last week, Taiwan President Lai Ching-te promised to encourage more Taiwanese companies to invest in the U.S., following Trump's announcement of separate possible levies on Taiwan-made semiconductors. Caught in the middle of their president's tariff campaign are U.S. consumers, now forced to deal with paying higher prices for their electronic goods, facing the brunt of an escalating trade war. Hank Xu and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
China's military is defending a dangerous maneuver one of its aircraft made near a Philippine plane over the hotly disputed South China Sea. Journalists on board the Philippines aircraft recorded a Chinese military helicopter coming within 3 meters of the plane near the disputed Scarborough Shoal off northwestern Philippines. The Philippines Coast Guard has described the maneuver as a reckless action and says it posed a serious risk to the safety of the pilots. China, which claims almost all of the South China Sea as its territory, says the Philippines aircraft illegally intruded into its airspace. Tuesday's incident is one of many between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea, but one of few happening in the skies. To find out more about how these tensions are evolving, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Aaron Matthew Lariosa, an independent security analyst based in Washington, D.C.
When we look at this dangerous maneuver from China next to this Philippine military aircraft, what is the most concerning thing that pops out at you?
The aerial incidents around Scarborough Shoal have been gradually increasing within the last year or two. This is particularly severe because this is like the first time, as we see from the video, the helicopter's gotten that close, roughly 3 meters, hovering above the Cessna, which did have embarked Philippine journalists that captured all of this. The Philippine Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources routinely sends out their patrol aircraft just to keep an eye on maritime militia and other activities. And in response, Chinese forces also do scramble, actually. They've scrambled fighter jets, helicopters, other assets to actually kind of shadow and to an extent harass these missions. For example, last August, we saw a Chinese fighter jet dump flares in front of a similar mission, and that was extremely unprofessional. And as we see on the sea, with the unprofessional conduct, the rammings, the other stuff, we are seeing a somewhat expansion of this into the aerial domain as Manila starts to extend more options up there.
Now, the Philippines is no stranger to Chinese aggression in the waters around the Philippines with the Coast Guard, maritime militia, and the Navy. But now it seems that this aggression is spilling to the skies above the South China Sea. How does the Philippines manage this kind of aggression?
The Philippines is an asymmetric disadvantage here. This is a very different domain from the stuff on the water. This involves aircraft and all of that, which it's at a disadvantage. The Philippine Air Force only has 12 jets. They did float the possibility of doing escort missions with these, but these are pretty the short legs on these jets. They can't exactly do sustain escort. The Philippine Air Force has been mirrored in a sort of a procurement quagmire with these new fighter jets they want, but that's been going on for decades at this point. So Manila has toyed with the idea of actually escorting these, but it doesn't exactly have the capability. Going forward, though, they don't really have too much of an option. It's either they stop the missions, accept that there will be risk or potential accidents, or keep going ahead and accept the risk in order to uphold their patrols and their sovereignty missions.
With Trump now in office, do you think there's going to be any differences in the way that the United States and the Philippines cooperate together to handle tensions in the South China Sea?
So I think this administration would probably want to kind of be a bit more, I wouldn't say aggressive, but at least a bit more present, at least visibly facing, to help out the Filipinos in this. A lot of the stuff they've already done, that could be building upon what happened in the Biden administration, which did a lot of stuff. They did EDCA, they increased joint patrols, they did all of this. But with the Trump administration, especially with that language of reestablishing deterrence, that could give a strong indication of what's to come.
That was Aaron Matthew Lariosa speaking to our reporter Jaime Ocon. Vietnam's parliament has approved plans to build an $8 billion railway connecting the Southeast Asian country with China. The 390-kilometer-long rail link will run from Vietnam's northern port city of Haiphong to Lao Cai, which borders China's Yunnan province. China will provide some funding for the project as part of Beijing's signature Belt and Road initiative. Haiphong is host to international manufacturing giants such as Samsung, Pegatron, and Foxconn, which rely on China for raw materials.
Trade between China and Vietnam is already absolutely massive. And this railway, it's designed to make this trade faster, cheaper, and more predictable as well. So currently, China supplies much of the raw materials that fuels Vietnam's manufacturing sector. And keeping that pipeline steady is absolutely critical.
Vietnam's parliament also approved a plan to cut 1 in 5 government jobs as part of efforts to slash the budget and erase the country's economic growth target for 2025 to 8%. At least 21 people died from flu complications in Taiwan last week, including a preschool-aged girl. Taiwan's Centers for Disease Control says the total death toll for this flu season has reached 181. The CDC says 148,000 people sought medical treatment for flu last week, the second highest for this period in the past decade. Health officials say flu cases are still in the epidemic phase, with the outbreak expected to ease by mid to late March. An additional 100,000 government-funded flu vaccines have been distributed, with priority given to high-risk groups. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with images of people in the UK wassailing, a traditional pagan ritual performed to ward off bad spirits from fruit orchards. I'm Yvonne Yang. Take care, and I'll see you next time.